Imagine standing on a windswept alien plateau, your hands deep in the guts of a humming solar panel, when you suddenly feel eyes on you. You turn, and there she is, a tiny alien girl with silver hair that catches the light like liquid metal, her violet eyes wide with wonder. Then, without thinking, she reaches out and touches you. Just a fleeting brush of her hand, warm, soft, alive, and then she blushes bright red. That single moment changes everything. If you're already hooked by that image, you're in the right place. This is a story of first contact, fragile trust, and the spark that can reshape entire worlds. Stick around, because what follows is a tale of war, hope, and a bond stronger than fear. And hey, if you enjoy deep dive sci-fi stories like this, make sure to hit like, tap subscribe, and share it with a friend who loves HFY storytelling. The plateau stretched endlessly beneath a rust-colored sky, its wind carrying fine dust that clung to every surface. Ethan knelt beside a humming solar panel, his gloves darkened by weeks of maintenance work. Life in the research camp was predictable, almost mechanical. Repair, report, repeat. But that day, something shifted. He felt it before he saw it, the weight of eyes, curious and unblinking. Slowly, he turned. Standing at the edge of the camp was a figure no taller than his chest. A girl, though not human. Her silver hair shimmered like threads of molten light, rippling in the breeze. And her eyes, deep violet, wide with both wonder and fear, locked onto his. She didn't run. She didn't hide. Instead, she stepped forward, her small hands clenched as though bracing herself against an invisible tide. Ethan raised one palm in peace, instinctively gentle. No words passed between them, only silence heavy with possibility. In that stillness, two worlds teetered on the edge of change. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her intent. But he knew one thing for certain. This encounter was no accident. The silence broke with the faintest sound, not from Ethan, but from her. Her lips moved, forming shapes that weren't quite human words. Soft syllables spilled out, melodic and strange, like fragments of song. Ethan pointed at himself. Ethan, he said clearly, pressing a hand against his chest. His voice carried across the wind, steady but cautious. She tilted her head, studying the gesture as though cataloging it. Then she touched her chest, mirroring him. A single word followed, whispered so carefully it almost vanished before reaching his ears. Leary. The name was fragile, like something precious shared for the first time. Ethan repeated it softly, testing the weight of it on his tongue. She blinked in surprise, then a faint shimmer crossed her pale skin, as though his attempt at her language meant something more than words could convey. From that moment, Leary followed him like a shadow. She kept her distance at first, padding silently behind as he repaired circuits or hauled supplies across rocky paths. But the distance shrank day by day. Her wide eyes soaked in everything, his tools, his movements, even the way he sighed after long work. And in her silence, curiosity burned brighter than fear. Days blurred together, yet something subtle shifted. Leary was no longer just a silent shadow. She began testing his words, repeating them in halting tones. "Wire," she'd say, "or tool," her voice uncertain but eager. When Ethan laughed at his own clumsy mistake, she mimicked the sound, then broke into a giggle so pure that he couldn't help but laugh with her. It was during one of those quiet afternoons, while Ethan knelt to secure a loose wire, that it happened. Without warning, a tiny hand brushed against his. The contact was feather-light, almost accidental, yet it carried a jolt that raced through him like static. Her skin was warm, startlingly soft, unlike any material or glove he had ever touched. Leary gasped. She snatched her hand back, pressing it against her face as her cheeks flushed a brilliant crimson, glowing against her pale skin. Ethan froze, then smiled gently. "It's all right, Leary," he said softly. Through her fingers, her violet eyes peeked at him. "I did not think," she whispered. "I just wish to know." In that instant, it was clear this was not merely curiosity. It was the first bridge between loneliness and something far greater. From that day, the questions began. They tumbled from Leary like pebbles rolling down a slope, small, countless, unstoppable. "Why do humans eat together around fire?" she asked one evening, watching the settlers gather for a meal. Ethan explained, fumbling for words, that food wasn't just about survival. It was about sharing warmth, stories, and laughter. She listened intently, violet eyes flickering with thought. Another time, her soft voice rose again. "Why do humans sing?" Ethan chuckled, uncertain how to answer. "Because sometimes words aren't enough," he said at last. "Singing carries what the heart can't keep inside." She tilted her head, as if memorizing the definition, then hummed a strange, crystalline note that made the air vibrate. It was beautiful. But the hardest question came on a ridge beneath the twin moons. Why do humans place hands upon shoulders when another weeps? Ethan's chest tightened. Memories of a family lost to war welled up unbidden. He told her, quietly, because it means you don't carry sorrow alone. She fell silent, considering every syllable. Then, with a gentleness almost sacred, she touched his shoulder. This time there was no blush, no hesitation, only understanding. And in that simple act, she became a student of humanity's heart. Not everyone in the camp shared Ethan's wonder. At first, the settlers watched Leary with wary curiosity, murmuring among themselves when she appeared at his side. But curiosity soon soured into suspicion. "She's dangerous," one technician whispered as Ethan passed. "A spy for those who hide in the mountains." Another muttered, "She's nothing but a distraction. He's risking all of us." The whispers spread like cracks in glass, silent at first, then splintering louder with every day. Ethan tried to ignore them, but he could feel the weight of their stays, the unease that followed him like a shadow. Leary, too, sensed it. Her questions grew quieter, her once bold steps more hesitant. Still, she stayed close, as if clinging to the fragile thread between them. One evening, as Ethan repaired a communications relay, a colleague approached him directly. "You need to send her away," the man hissed, "before she brings trouble down on all of us." Ethan's jaw tightened. "She's not our enemy," he said firmly. But even as he spoke, he knew reason alone might not be enough. Fear had a way of blinding people, and fear was spreading fast. Some bonds grow stronger under pressure. Others are torn apart. The camp was about to find out which this one would be. The attack came without warning. A shuddering boom split the night, followed by screams that tore through the steel walls of the camp. Raiders from beyond the desert had found them. Fire licked the sky as explosions ripped through supply crates. Ethan grabbed his rifle, heart hammering. He joined the others, firing into the shadows, but the raiders came in waves. Too many, too fast. Sparks rained down, the air thick with smoke and terror. Then, through the chaos, a small figure appeared. Leary, her silver hair caught the firelight as she sprinted toward him, eyes blazing with a determination he had never seen before. Morning brought no celebration. Though Leary's shield had saved them, the camp's council gathered in tense silence. Their faces were drawn tight, their voices sharp with unease. "She has power none of us understand," one leader declared. "What else might she be hiding?" Another added, "If she could repel raiders so easily, what's to stop her from turning that force on us?" Ethan stood before them, fists clenched. "She saved your lives. Without her, we'd all be ash in the sand." But his words met stone walls. Fear had already taken root. To the council, Leary wasn't a savior. She was a threat. The verdict was swift, merciless. She must leave, for the safety of all. Ethan's voice broke. "No, you don't understand. She's not our enemy." Behind him, Leary stood silent. Her violet eyes flicked from the council to Ethan, then down to her hands. Finally, she reached for him, her touch trembling. "If I stay," she whispered, "they will turn against you." He shook his head fiercely, but she only smiled, sad and resolute. And before he could stop her, she slipped into the desert night, choosing exile over watching him suffer. "Get back!" Ethan shouted. But she didn't listen. She raised her hands, and the world shifted. A barrier of shimmering light erupted around them, deflecting blasts of fire and dazzling arcs. The raiders' shot scattered harmlessly, sizzling against the radiant shield. Gasps rose from the defenders. Leary stood at the center, her small frame glowing as if every heartbeat fueled the shield itself. Together, with her light and their weapons, the raiders were forced to retreat into the night. The camp was saved, but as the smoke cleared, silence fell. And in that silence, fear began to whisper her name. The desert swallowed her without a trace. Ethan searched until his legs gave out, wandering across ridges and ravines, calling her name into the endless winds. But Leary was gone, vanished into silence. Days stretched into weeks. Weeks bled into months. Eventually, the camp expanded, the machines multiplied, and new settlers arrived. Life moved forward, for everyone except Ethan. He carried her absence like a wound that refused to heal. Every corner of the camp held echoes of her laughter, her clumsy attempts at words, her crystal-like humming, the warmth of her small hand brushing his. He replayed those moments endlessly, fearing they would fade if he didn't hold them tight. Colleagues stopped asking about her. Whispers quieted, replaced by the dull hum of routine. But Ethan's world had narrowed to an emptiness only she had filled. Years passed. His hair grayed. His hands grew slower. Still, at night, he found himself gazing toward the horizon, hoping for a glimpse of silver hair beneath alien moons. Some wounds, he realized, aren't healed by time. They simply become part of you, etched deep, waiting for a moment that may never come. And yet, deep inside, he held on to a fragile ember, the hope that their story wasn't over. The storm came first, lightning tearing across the night sky, winds howling against steel walls. Ethan stood outside, leaning on a railing, older now, wearier. He had stopped searching long ago, but never stopped remembering. Then, through the storm, lights appeared. Not lightning, something brighter, more deliberate. A vast ship descended, gleaming with crystal radiance, its hull glowing like a fallen star. The camp erupted in shouts, fear and awe mixing in equal measure. Figures emerged, tall and graceful, their skin faintly luminous. At their center walked a woman whose presence stopped Ethan's breath. Silver hair cascaded over her shoulders, eyes burning violet. "Ethan," she called, her voice carrying through the storm. He staggered forward. It couldn't be. Yet it was. Leary, no longer the tiny girl, but grown, radiant, strong. And yet her smile was the same. She rushed to him, taking his hands in hers. "I left to find my people," she said. "I told them of humanity, of kindness, of family. Now we return, not as shadows, but as friends." Tears blurred his vision. She had come back. After all those empty years, she had kept her promise. The ember of hope burst into flame. Behind Leary stood her people, leaders who bowed with quiet respect. They spoke of alliance, of building trust, of a future where two civilizations might walk the same path. And every word traced back to her stories of a single human who once showed her warmth in a world of suspicion. Ethan listened, heart swelling. That first touch, one so small, had become the seed of peace. Humanity, scarred by war and mistrust, was now offered a chance to heal, because a tiny alien girl once reached out without thinking. As the great ship prepared to depart, Leary turned to him. Her cheeks flushed red, just as they had years ago. "Ethan," she whispered, "you are my family forever." He nodded, unable to speak, tears slipping free as they stepped aboard together. Ahead lay galaxies unexplored, but he knew one truth. He would never walk them alone. It began with a touch. It ended with a promise that spanned the stars. And that's how one fleeting moment, a tiny hand brushing against another, reshaped the destiny of two worlds. Powerful, isn't it? If this story moved you, imagine what's still to come. We dive deep into tales of humanity's courage, our flaws, and the sparks that make us unforgettable in the universe. So if you're new here, don't just watch and vanish. Hit subscribe, tap the bell, and join this growing community of dreamers and star walkers. Because together, we'll keep walking among the stars.